Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's now 5:30 p.m. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission work session of Monday, January 5th, 2026. April, citizen comments on the items listed on the agenda. Did anyone sign up to speak?
No one signed up. Thank you.
Any report for the City Council meeting decisions on December 11th, 2025?
No, just the decision's been provided in your packet from the last meeting.
Thank you, Jocelyn. We'll move on to the review of the public hearing items.
Okay, you have for the consent agenda, you have the minutes, you have the one item that was listed for approval. You also will now have items number 3 and 5, the two plats that are 2025-415 and 2025-464. Those are both now ready for approval, so those will be added to consent approval. And now you only have one plat for consent disapproval. Are there any questions on the plats? Okay. In that case, the first public hearing item is actually mine, so. I'm playing the role of Gina tonight. Okay, so item number 6 is zoning case 2025-266. It's at 712 South Beltline Road. From SP1 COU2, detailed site plan from commercial outdoor 2 to SP1 COU2. This is basically amending the existing site plan to revise the layout, increase the building, and so forth. Staff recommendation, I'm sorry, that moved really fast. Staff recommendations for approval. There we go. And we have no comment forms in support or opposition as of this time. The property was part of a, so this whole property right here was part of a zoning case about 25, 30 years ago. And then these two properties were part of another case subsequent to that. And for basically auto sales display was supposed, and the office for it were supposed to be on this lot and other things on this lot. This never got developed in that way. The COU2 use does allow the auto repair use, but it's a detailed site plan, so the layout is completely different than what council previously approved, which is why this can't be done as an administrative amendment. So here you see the existing site plan for it. You see the building. They had 4 cars for sale. They had roughly 16 parking spaces. This is the proposed site plan, so it's a little bit larger building. They don't have any display spaces for cars for sale. There'll actually be bay doors, be 3 bay doors on this building. They have 7 parking spaces. They have enough parking to meet the requirements. They're planning on doing kind of a quick car loop into kind of place. So they don't have any spaces to keep cars overnight. That would also include they don't have well, technically they still could do auto sales on the lot since it's COU2. They don't have any display spaces, so they couldn't really display any cars on site. So this is a subject property. It's the vacant portion in front right here, and these are other developed properties back behind it. And you see over to the side, you have the Dollar General to the north. You have the Volvo repair to the south, and you have Taco Bell and some vacant property across the way. So staff's recommendation is for approval of this, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Hi, thank you. Do we know if there's like a common ownership or control with those neighboring properties?
There is, and this driveway right here is a mutual access easement between all the properties.
Okay.
So that's where the primary access is going to be. So it's the same ownership, but even if it weren't, it is a mutual access easement. It's platted that way. Any other questions?
I just have one quick one. What will the surface be? Are they required to put in concrete?
It has to be concrete or asphalt.
Oh, okay. Any other questions? We can proceed to the next case then.
All right, Dylan will take the next one.
Hi there. Good evening. This is zoning case 2025-355 ZC, located at 4019 Jackson Street. Located, it's R6. It's going to SP2 R6, generalized site plan, for parking lot as a principal use. The staff recommendations for approval, and there's been no comments in support or opposition. There's the aerial view, the existing zoning or future land use, the surrounding zoning, notification map, their site plan that they submitted, the subject property itself, the house to the east of it, there's a house to also the south, and then also the west. And this is the religious center to the south of the property that the parking would be for. And then some additional background on this case. This site was previously developed with a religious center. I believe in 2024, they demoed the building and left the parking lot. The parking lot has kind of always been there to be used as overflow parking for their current religious center located across the street. That one. Per the site plan, no outdoor storage will be allowed as an accessory use, and the parking will only be allowed for the religious center across the street. Any comments or questions?
Any resident feedback at all, Dylan?
No, ma'am.
Thanks, Dylan. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next case.
Let Dylan just stay up there for a second. The next item was postponed to a specific date. That's why it's on the agenda, the case on Pleasant Run for multifamily. It was postponed to give council time to act on the economic development agreement. They still haven't. It was thought that they would have acted on it by now, but they haven't. It should be this month, so we're asking that this be postponed to the February 2nd Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Thank you.
Okay?
I'll be presenting this case as well. It's 2025-425 ZC, located at 818 South Irving Heights Drive. They're going from RMF2 to single family. There's no site plan associated with this one. Staff recommendation is for approval, and there's no comments in support or opposition. There's the aerial, future land use, surrounding zoning, the notification map, the subject property, which is currently vacant, but it has some sort of construction has been going on. The apartment complex adjacent to it to the south, the apartment complex across the street to the west, a northern property adjacent to the property that is a single-family residence. And since there's no site plan for this case, just going to leave it on the picture here. Background on this case is that in August 2025, the applicant submitted plans to the inspection department for renovations. They decided then it would be more efficient to just demo the house and build a new. Since the previous house was legal non-conforming under the RMF2, the new house will have to be brought up to code, and that includes zoning, which brings us here today. Any comments or questions?
With the zoning they have right now, could they build a triplex?
Yeah, the current zoning is RMF2. They would be able to build multifamily units.
Thank you.
And if they would have kept the existing home, certain portions of it or whatever, and went ahead and renovated it, they could have went ahead and kept a single-family home there, correct?
Yes, I believe that as long as the renovations didn't exceed 50% of the DCAD value, then they would have just gone through permits.
Okay. So it's really no change, just a new home.
As such.
They got into it, their permits were originally for an expansion, then they kind of got into it, realized it was better to just tear down the old structure and start fresh, so.
Thanks, Dylan. Moving on to the next case.
And this is my last one for tonight. 2025-434 ZC, located at 1330 West Pioneer Drive. They are going from CC to SP1 for RAB. Staff recommendation is for approval, and again, there's been none in support or opposition for comments. The aerial view, the current zone, or future land use, surrounding zoning, notification map, their site plan, is the Angela's Spaghetti and Pizza House located here on this corner lot. Here's also the view from North Rogers. West of the property, so across the street from North Rogers, a apartment complex north of the lot across the street from West Pioneer. East of the property is an abandoned Sonic, and south of the property is affordable storage. Background on this one, so since the current lot has 55 parking spaces, the requirement per UDC, since it's going through a zoning case, would have to be updated. That would be 73 spots. But since the applicant is not increasing the number of seats per their CO or the square footage of the restaurant, and it's been like this since, I believe, the original lot was established in 1974, staffers deemed that a parking variance would not be required. And then any comments or questions on this?
Y'all are making this too easy tonight. Thanks, Dylan. Next case, please.
Alrighty, good evening, Commissioners. Haley Riddick here with Planning. My first case is going to be that 2025-437 ZC. It's located at 3723 Confluence Road. Currently, the zoning is that light industrial 20A. They're wanting to rezone it to community commercial. After staff review, the recommendation is for approval. In terms of public comment, there's been none in support or in opposition. So this is the subject property and then the future land use. With this one, the future land use is currently local commercial, and the proposed zoning doesn't align with that, but it also doesn't align with the current zoning, which is that ML20A. So since it's kind of going to a less intense zoning district, we're not requiring them to do a comp plan amendment. And their zoning, you have the ML20 to the east and west, and then you have residential up here, R6, and then R6 down here, but this is a recreation center. And then the property owners that were notified. And then since this is straight zoning, they're not asking for any variances. This is just a conceptual site plan that they provided to inspections. Kind of what brought about this case was in May of this year, or not this year, 2025, they applied and they did receive a certificate of occupancy. They did it for office and warehouse uses. A few months later in June of 2025, they applied for a permit to remodel the warehouse space that they wanted to make it a rest area for ambulance drivers. That kind of sparked off because ambulance service isn't allowed in the current zoning. So now they're here trying to make it current. They've already been occupying the space, obviously, but they're just trying to make it legal. So then, one, the use is allowed, and then two, they can move forward with their renovations. So this is the subject property. To the west, so their neighbor. To the east, their other neighbor. And then the south, so this is where that recreation center is. I'm open to any comments or questions.
Have there been any complaints since they've been operating to, I don't know, code enforcement or otherwise?
Not that we're aware of. They did say in their letter of intent, the proposed use includes ambulance deployment, crew transfer, administrative activity, and storage of medical supplies, and that there will be no siren use on the property. So that's what they told us. But yeah, in terms of actually something that's been reported now.
Thank you.
I saw also a note about there were fire code violations. Would you know what were those?
Not necessarily. I think I might have. Yeah, I'm not sure for what. Anyone have an idea on that?
They were noted with the building permit, but those will have to be resolved.
They were waiting to get the approval for a fire alarm system, is that what we said? Okay, yeah.
Any other questions? Moving on to the next one. Thanks, Haley.
All righty.
Okay, good evening again. Ken Bloom, Planning Manager. These next two cases are companion cases, so with your permission, I'll just kind of take them together.
That's fine.
But they are a little bit different recommendations for both of them. Item number 12 is a straight zoning case. It's currently MFW, Freeway and State Highway 1A3 overlay. The request is to change it to ML20A, Light Industrial and State Highway 183 overlay. And this would be so that they could ask for a conditional use permit for a data center. That's the next case. You can't ask for a conditional use permit for a data center in the MFW district. So it's kind of a step one, step two. So we're looking at this is at 2701 East Grauweiler. So it's not the portion as in PUD 6, it's the portion that's outside of PUD 6 off of Grauweiler and basically a corner of that in Maryland. And it's the old Excella technology facility. It's been vacant since about 2020. The applicant will ultimately seek to demolish the existing structures if the other case is approved as well. But this is just for the ML20A and the 1A3 overlay. So the future land use map shows this as being industrial uses. So the zoning district is appropriate for this area. From a straight zoning standpoint, industrial uses, light industrial uses such as in the ML20A are appropriate. Additionally, the 1A3 overlay would also allow retail and restaurant uses in this location. So really from a rezoning standpoint, the applicant's not really losing anything by having this approved. It would just be a different category that would then allow them to apply for the conditional use permit. But even without that, we would end up recommending approval of the ML20A based on the future land use map and the surrounding uses. So you have the notification map here. These large zoning signs still throw me sometimes. You have the existing buildings which will be demolished. This is a view from Grauweiler. Looking at the residential uses west of the subject property. So this is in the mobile home park. And you have some residential property at Zone CC that's adjacent to the subject property. I'll show where that is in a second with the next case. And then to the south, you have some industrial. So that is the zoning. I'm going to move on for now to the 443, which is the case for the conditional use permit for a data center campus. So again, you have the subject property. Basically, data centers are, again, they're allowed by CUP. They have to meet the data center standards, Section 320 of the ordinance. The applicant's not asking for any variances to the data center standards. I will note that until earlier today, there was some miscommunication with the applicant where they had they had listed the square feet of the footprint rather than the square feet of the building as a whole, so they count basically only one story instead of two story. So if you're looking at your staff report, this is actually, each building is approximately 256,000 square feet instead of 128,000 and change. And so the total square footage for these three proposed buildings would be 768,000. So it's basically double the number because you have two stories instead of one. Maximum height would be 75 feet. That's per the Section 320, be again a two-story product. This is proposed as being a multi-tenant co-location data center, so it wouldn't be for a single user. It is the applicant does have a lot of experience building data centers, but this is not being built for a single user. They would, it's the kind of would be a co-location. There are a couple different methods of cooling these centers. Basically, they fall into, do you use basically what they call adiabatic, I'm hoping that's a correct pronunciation, adiabatic dry cooling system. Basically, that uses 14,000 gallons per day per building. So that's basically where it's basically an evaporative type of situation. So little pads and they produce mist and that cools the air. The other version is an air-cooled system, which is basically a closed loop system where basically it has the cost of, there's the filling of all of the coolers, but then it's a closed system after that. There's little to no evaporation through that. For electrical service, they are going to be pulling from one of the large transmission lines. It's over to the west. In order to bring that over, what they're showing here is the substation would be on the east side of the site over here. They would bring the transmission lines would go from the west over here. They'd either go down Grauweiler or more likely, because it involves fewer properties, go up to 183. It would cut across this area that is in PUD 6 in all likelihood, and then down into the site where the the proposed new substation would be over here. We've been in contact with Encore, and of course, nothing specific can be guaranteed or anything at this point, but they would likely be 80-foot tall monopole type of steel towers. These aren't going to be the smaller wood poles. These will be the larger poles because of the amount of electricity on them. So general criteria for identification of data center, we have presented this information to council. They didn't necessarily adopt this, but we still use it as kind of a good way to try to evaluate everything. And we look at is the location proximity to Encore transmission lines, to electric substations, to DFW Airport, other industrial uses, not being near residential, and generally not being on highway fringes. And again, the site-by-site, case-by-case consideration for water and cooling. So the Grauweiler Road is kind of the northern edge of what we kind of identify in the mapping as a potential area for data centers. This is the 256 kilowatt transmission line going through here. There are two substations down here. That excludes the substation that the applicant would be proposing to build. And there are other data centers down existing over here. And of course, this is an industrial area. But this area is outside of priority area 5. So the red is where that is. You'll notice a few things here. Subject property here in orange. These 3 blue areas are residential uses. Now, the multifamily is zoned a residential use down here. It's a little bit to the south and a little bit off to the side, but the applicant is proposing to have a large utility yard down over here, which would not be screened. Some of their utility yards are screened by buildings. This area is just listed as utility yard, so it's a little unknown what kind of equipment would be down here. There is residential adjacency to these homes right here, which you saw in the previous photos. These are zone CC. And the mobile home park, which is right across the street here, this is actually zone ML20. The way the ordinance reads is they have to be at least 300 feet away from any residentially zoned property. So none of these two are residentially zoned, and this ends up being 300 feet away from where the data center buildings would be because they're showing them up here. So they do meet the requirements as far as that's concerned, but there is some residential adjacency. Again, the power lines would be, the transmission line is over on this side. They could come across over here, but you can see the problems of the number of properties that would involve the right-of-way for that. They're more likely come across over here and bring it across. So again, the conditions for CUP approval, basically is it consistent with the comprehensive plan, compatible with adjacent uses, compatible with and preserve the character and integrity of the neighborhoods, has a negative impact been mitigated, and is it not materially detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare. And then there are some limitation options. Limitations building size, height, parking, landscaping, additional buffer yard screening, and so forth. Again, you have the same photos as before. This is the entrance to a mobile home park. You see the mailbox is right here, and then the mobile homes just kind of line up and then go past that there. These are the residential uses there, homes that are zone CC. Just a couple of hours. So our recommendations for denial. That being said, a couple of for recommendations for approval for the zoning case, recommendations for denial for the CUP. However, a couple hours ago, in discussions with the water department, they would like some additional information on the technologies that this particular applicant would be employing, and they also have concerns of a easement that runs in this general area as well. And so Ashley is here if you have any specific questions on that, but basically they have requested that we actually ask for postponement. The applicant has indicated they're amenable to that. The request at this time for both those cases is actually a recommendation to postpone the case to February 2nd. With all of that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
So we want to postpone the zoning on it. They don't want to go forward with the zoning?
I think it's probably, you could do either one, but it's probably best just to take everything together since the whole point of the rezoning is to put in a category that allows them to do the CUP. So it just keeps everything on track. It makes it easier to explain. Honestly, it makes it easier to explain to city council and not say, oh, you have this case, but there's this other one coming down the road. So it would end up getting postponed so that they were all together at council anyway.
Now, this is sort of unique, and I think Josh hit on this back when we were looking at the ordinances for the data center. There's residential on commercial property. Mm-hmm. Basically. So I assume the residential was there before it was on commercial?
Yes. And these were area-wide. I go back, if you allow me just to go back to these. You see these case numbers, 4004, that's an area-wide rezoning. Yeah. Where, big chunks of the city were rezoned. 974, that is one of the earliest zoning cases under the current, more or less current zoning classifications we have. So this was done not as an area rezoning, but was done in probably, look at the number, about 1965. So
we put stuff in place to protect residents in residential neighborhoods.
Right.
This was a residential neighborhood that basically got rezoned to a commercial.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. Mm-hmm. So what's there to protect them from the same issues that would be right next to a house? I mean, this is their livelihood. This is where they live. Whether it's a mobile home or whether it's one of the little houses, this is where they live. Mm-hmm. So what's there to protect the residents from the common issues that we've experienced with data centers?
Again, there's nothing at the data center per se, because again, it's protection for residentially zoned properties. But again, this being a CUP, you can require additional setbacks, additional screening, additional height to that screen. I will note that the screening for the ground equipment does have to be, the ground equipment has to be 1 foot below the top of the fence, or 10 feet or 1 foot below top of the fence, whichever is greater. Now, that's backwards from what it is everywhere else in our ordinance. So if the equipment, in this case, let's say the equipment were 15 feet tall, then they'd have to build a 16-foot tall wall and have it engineered and everything. So that's reverse of the rest of our ordinance, where it's basically go up to 10 feet and you're okay. Here, it has to be at least 10 feet, regardless of any residential adjacency. Those screen yards have to be screened.
Well, my concern is just protecting their quality of life.
Yeah.
And not
Understand.
interrupting it just because somebody come in and did a layover or whatever in their property.
Yeah, I mean, on those same lines, can't we recommend denying the CUP? I mean, because they're a residential really close by, even though it's not zoned residential? I mean, didn't one of the requirements allow us the flexibility to deny a CUP based on the impact on the surrounding area and maintaining the character
Yeah.
of the area?
Yeah, you still have that choice. It's
Yeah.
just, what I was speaking about was just the 3.20 standards. Just the
Yeah.
data center standards, that those don't necessarily, all those say is, these are standards, that doesn't mean that you're guaranteed any sort of approval.
But we in the council still have the discretion to deny a request like this.
Absolutely.
Because there are homes nearby.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Just a separate question. You mentioned the Encore utility lines and the possibility of coming on the south end or the north end. My understanding generally with utility easements is they typically have use and access easements oftentimes on the perimeter of properties, or at least that's where it's most common. Does the city have much control where those transmission lines would go, or is it just if they've got the easement, they can choose where they want to put them?
They're a public utility, and the city basically can't regulate the public utility. They have essentially eminent domain power, so.
Okay.
And I'm looking at Carolyn as I'm saying this. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Okay.
Thanks.
What will happen with the land, the 13 acres up north?
Right now, it's zoned in PUD 6 for light industrial uses. Beyond that, I couldn't tell you what.
Now, do they own it?
I'm not sure who owns that portion. It wasn't part of the zoning case, so.
Because
I think it's the same owner, but I'm not sure. But the CUP would not apply to that portion.
Now, when we saw this case, we saw similar, well, not for this case, for this property about a year ago. It was for, I think there were two cases, for the 13 acres and for the up north, and then for the 37 acres down the south. Now, was the property sold? And this is a new applicant, and the new applicant just bought the 37 acres?
You'd have to check with the applicant this evening for the exact times of transaction dates. I couldn't answer that for you.
Thank you.
But they're asking for a postponement on this one.
We're actually requesting the postponement. They're amenable to it because our water department wants time to discuss some of these technologies I mentioned earlier about the different types of cooling. And we need to get a handle on a little better handle on what they're actually proposing, what their needs would be, and those sort of things, as well as some easement issues that are easements in the area as well, so.
I have a question. If a data center were not on that property, do you need the really tall monopoles for power in an area which is highly visible to PUD 6? And it's my understanding, we would not want large transmission towers of some significant height around that area.
The only way I can answer that is to say the lines are to bring the power from the west to the substation that would be built on the property.
Yeah, when I talked to Encore, it was connecting the high-power transmission lines over to the substation, which needs high-power transmission lines. So unless there was a user that needed that level of power, you probably wouldn't need towers that big, because normally it would just be distribution. So it all depends on who the user would be.
And if we, as part of the CUP, required the large monopole power towers to go down Grauweiler, does that make this project financially
We can't
We can't do
control
that.
where they put the power.
only
Yeah.
Encore,
Yes.
We can't control Encore.
which you've said earlier? Thank you.
You have mentioned the recommendation, if this case was approved, that it should be with the recommendation of adding the air cooler chiller for the cooling system. Why is that?
Because of the less water use, but having said that, after speaking with our water department today, they want a better handle on what the technologies are for the cooling and what that would be, what that would mean for them regardless of the technology type. So that's why the request for a postponement.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ken? Okay, we'll move on to the next case.
Okay.
All right, the final case for tonight is 2025-446CC. This is at 505 Thompson Street. Currently is zoned R6, and they're going to go to a generalized site plan for R6 for accessory dwelling unit and a variance to the minimum side yard setback. After review, staff recommendation is for denial. In terms of public comment, there was none in support or in opposition. This is subject property, compact neighborhood, surrounding zoning, so it's just all R6 single-family homes. These are the property owners that were notified, and then this is the site plan. So to give a little bit backstory on this case and why it's coming before us today. So in November of last year, 2025, they received a notice of violation from code enforcement for the construction of accessory structure without a building permit. It looks like the structure has been visible via aerial as far back as early 2023. And there was no permit submitted for the construction or structure of the utility connections. Per the applicant's letter of intent, they said that they're using it as a office and study area, but since it has a kitchen, a full bathroom, a built-in HVAC system, it's considered to be a dwelling unit. I did talk to Ricardo in code enforcement. He says that the owner that's listed on DCAT is actually not living on the property, and there's two different tenants living, one living in the ADU and one living in the main house. In terms of R6, we only allow one dwelling unit per lot, so, and since there hasn't been any standards that have been adopted for ADUs yet, we recommend denial based off of that, or they can only be approved via site plan zoning, which is why they're here today. The structure itself is about 420 square feet, and it's about 14 feet tall. Because of the height, it is meeting the distance requirement for the rear, but is not for the side. So for the side, they need at least 9 feet, and they have just over 6 feet. So that's why their two variances is to, one, allow it as an ADU, and then two, for that side yard variance. So this is the subject property. Their neighbors to the left, neighbors to the right, and then their neighbor across the street. So this is the subject building. A lot of these were taken by code enforcement. So here's that HVAC system. And here's kind of the living space, the bed, bathroom, so shower, toilet, sink, the kitchen. Looks like they're just missing a dishwasher. an oven, but it has kind of the other stuff that makes it a full kitchen. And this is kind of that part to the left, so kind of like an enclosed patio, but it looks like it's being used for storage in these pictures. And I'm open to any comments or questions.
Have there been any complaints from anybody in the neighborhood about it?
Not that I'm aware, we did have a homeowner call today, kind of asking about the case, and there was some, she might come today. There was some things about, I guess she was kind of worried about the placement of it, but she wasn't completely sure. So she might be here tonight. I did tell her that it's being heard tonight, but besides that, no, there's been no letters, there's been no calls. It seems like it's just something maybe that code enforcement happened upon. It wasn't a complaint, so.
If you can give me a couple minutes, I can check and see if it was reactive or proactive.
So I have a quick question. You said that there's two different tenants living, one tenant living in the house and one in the
ADU.
In the ADU. And then their letter, they indicate they use it as a small office and study space for their family, but they don't live on the property. Is that correct?
That's what I've been told.
Okay, thank you.
What happens to this upon denial?
Sorry?
What happens to this structure if we decide to deny it? What's going to happen to this structure?
They would have to remove everything that makes it livable, so the shower, the kitchen stuff, the HVAC, and then there's still the thing of it, since it's so tall and it's encroaching into the side yard, that's also another issue. So they would have to either move it or remove it or modify it to where it's not in that setback. There's been some cases that have potentially talked about going to BOA for just the setback, but we haven't had a case for that just yet, so.
Just to answer the earlier question, this was a reactive case based on a complaint back in October.
When you have a reactive case like that and code enforcement goes out and then it's determined there's an ADU there, do they look at the other immediate area to determine if there are similar situations? Because I noticed a number of buildings and backyards there. I'm not saying they're ADUs, because some of them look more like an open-sided storage area, a storage shed. One had a really, really tall roof line. So does code look at other things and then apply similar conditions to and notifications to property owners when they're in that area? Because I hate for one ADU to get denied and there's an ADU 2 houses over.
The answer is maybe. I mean, so they look at it and they'll cite the one, they'll focus on the one that they're working with now. If they if they choose to investigate some of the others that they see, that's their prerogative. Sometimes the owners will say, well, what about my neighbors? And we say, please submit something if you want us to take a look at those. So I'm speaking for code, but it's, they don't start marching down the street per se, but if they see things blatant, that's their prerogative to also look into those if they choose.
I was just asking for consistency, how it's applied. Any other questions tonight on this case? No? Thank you. Thanks, Haley.
All right, so this is the first of our 2 text amendments for tonight. We discussed these last month at the work session, so I'll just go through the presentation pretty quickly and answer any questions if you have any. So this proposal is to move the authority to approve carports to the Board of Adjustment by special exception. So in order to do so, there's several amendments that need to be done, and also some criteria that would need to be set for the Board of Adjustment to follow. So carports currently have to be permitted. They're allowed by right if they do not encroach into any setbacks and meet all the requirements. These are all all the current requirements. They have to be open on 3 sides, can't exceed 400 square feet, utilities, drainage, pavement. If they can't meet the required front, side, or rear, they have to be processed through an SP2 currently. And there's also, C here has an old that really isn't enforced, that a carport would have to be demolished before it's approved and rebuilt. So we are proposing to remove that. So the state does allow cities to use the special exception process. That's what we're choosing to do. So in order to authorize carports by special exception, we did some amendments or some tweaks to the section 1.15 for special exceptions. Currently, it's just for truck parking in the front yard, which since I've been here, I've never seen one. So we had to massage that section pretty heavily, clarify the procedure and requirements for a special exception, specify the public hearing and notice, which is similar to the zoning process, and then create the criteria or considerations for the Board of Adjustment approval. And then we also are revising the accessory section so that carports in the front yard would refer back to this section 1.15 for the special exception. So some of the criteria, this has kind of been the point of discussion for the last several months with the City Council. The carport must be 10 feet or more from the front property line, and all these criteria would have to be met. And if any of them are not met, then the way it is in the ordinance is that the Board of Adjustment would not be authorized to approve a carport. The carport complies with all the other applicable regulations. It was originally built with either a one-car garage or no garage, or there's other legal carports on the block. Also in the option, you have 2 different ordinances in your packet tonight. One we call the original, which just has these 2 items in number 3. The one we call P&Z recommended or P&Z proposal also has a consideration for disability. We had discussed that last time, and y'all asked us to include that. So that is in, you do have 2 different ordinances tonight for you to consider. So that would be under number 3. There's no access to the rear of the property through an alley. There's not access to the rear of the property on the side or where a carport could be on the side. And number 7, that the height, location, and size of the carport would not have a detrimental impact on adjacent properties. And that's where the notification is so important, because the neighbors around it who'd be affected by the carport would have an opportunity to provide their input on whether they would find it detrimental to them. We also need to do some just updates to the Board of Adjustment section to clarify their duties. And other amendments, just some cleanups while we're there, to allow larger properties that are over a half acre to have up to 2 carports as long as no more than 1 is forward to the front wall, and to eliminate that demolition and the fee requirement. So if y'all recommend approval of one of those ordinances today, we would be taking it to the City Council next Thursday for their consideration. So again, you have 2 different ordinances. One has the wording that allows for, I didn't put it in this PowerPoint, but allows for consideration on if one of the users of the home has a disability, and the other would not have that consideration. So I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any for tonight. But this is on your agenda tonight for a recommendation.
I got one question. On the half acre, it says you can put 2 400 square foot carports up. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that you can connect them?
No.
They have to be separated and meet the requirement of the separation, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you could have one, and it could even be in the front as long as it's not forward of the front setback. That would still apply. But then you could have one in the rear for, a boat or something in the back.
So we're not going to have a big 800 square foot carport?
No, that's not the intention with this.
Okay.
I think
And we're removing, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, we're removing the, to have it demolished and additional fees and all that, correct?
Yeah, that was interesting. You had to demolish it, and then pay an additional fee, and then get approval to build it back.
Okay.
And that just didn't make sense. They are double feed, so if they build it before they get approved, they are double feed at the time of building permit through the inspections department.
Jocelyn, I think you covered this a little bit last time, but so if the Board of Adjustment can't approve it for one reason or another, I think you said there's is there no other way for them can they go to the city council to get a carport approved?
So the way we wrote in the ordinance, that if they get denied at the Board of Adjustment by special exception, the SP would not be an option. So they would not be able to go to city council, because the Board of Adjustment is legally separate from city council in terms of their function and operation. So the only amenity, or the only remedy to a Board of Adjustment decision is a district court.
Okay. So then on this, the disability access language, I took a look at that. It says the carport will accommodate a disabled person's ability to access, use, and enjoy the dwelling. So, I mean, is there any definition of a disabled person? I mean, I just see that kind of language is going to be exploited. They'll just come up with a disability.
Both the state, and Carolyn, feel free to jump in, both the state and the federal have definitions of disability, and we would follow those.
Okay. And then it says to accommodate. So there's no threshold of like hardship or anything like that. If it provides any accommodation whatsoever, then technically it could be approved under that section. Is that how you would read that?
And that would be for the Board of Adjustment to ask the applicant for, but it's about using their property as they see necessary for the person who has the disability.
That would only apply to item number 3. They would still have to meet the requirements for 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Correct.
So it's only number 3 that would be an option for.
Yeah.
They have to meet all 7.
Thank you.
And they certainly have the case, if it's denied because they didn't meet these 7 criteria, they certainly have the opportunity to revise their application to meet the 7. Or you would not even bother to present it to Board of Adjustments if it doesn't meet the 7.
And that will be up for the applicant to decide if they want
Want
to
to proceed.
proceed with that. Yeah, it's when it comes to the fee, whether you're zoning or Board of Adjustment, you're paying for the process and not for the approval, so that'd be their choice.
Certainly different for the residents to understand that this is a final say.
And we've seen some, just to follow up on that, for the number 1, that the carport would have to be at least 10 feet or more. If we get some, we're working on a case right now, it's 9 feet. Y'all had one month or so ago that was 8 feet. You can't ask for a variance as part of the special exception. That would be a whole separate variance they would have to ask for, which would have the hardship measure. So why can't you meet the 10 feet? You would have to show us a physical hardship why you can't put your carport back at 10 feet. And so it'd be a 2-step. In 2 cases, they would have to have heard in order to get a carport at 8 feet.
If I stop and think about Commissioner Viglianti, who was always really an advocate for education of our residents, this is one of those situations where we need to do some education of people about carports, because it's a big change.
Do they have an option to not go to the BOA and bring it to us?
No.
They
No,
will not have it.
this would remove it from the zoning process. This is it's a variance. I mean, this is an accessory use to a residential property.
Okay.
And that's not a use discussion. So that's why we've been talking about it for years, to take to the special exception, but also carports not rise to the level often of a hardship measure. So that special exception is kind of that middle ground.
And they will be aware that this is sort of like the final, when they file it, if they want to not meet the criteria.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, but going through the zoning process will not be an option.
When you mentioned that if they build it without the permit and then they're gonna get double fee, what are we talking about double fee? What is? How much is that?
Oh, if the fee is $100, they would be charged $200. And that's in place today for every type of building permit. So if you build a house without a permit, and it's a $2,000, or a $1,500 fee, it's going to be double feed. But we usually see that for the smaller, maybe a $30 permit fee and it's doubled to $60. But it's intended to be punitive.
Intended?
Because we want people to get building permits.
Right. But sounds like very low.
Well, it depends on what the permit fee is for whatever they're building. But it doesn't apply just to carports, it applies to every building permit. More questions?
So tonight, you're looking for a recommendation in the public hearing to move this forward to city council as outlined in this way.
Yes, and you have two ordinances. And again, one's labeled original, one's labeled Planning and Zoning Commission request. And so whoever makes the motion, we need y'all to specify which one you want to recommend and get a majority vote for us to move forward to the city council. And the only difference is that disability phrase.
Everybody clear? Thanks, Jocelyn.
Thank you.
And you have one more item and one more amendment to consider tonight. It's UDC amendment for cemetery regulations. Again, you've had this presentation before, so I'll just hit the high points. Have several cemeteries there, but these would be standards on new cemeteries, not on existing ones. Basically, the Texas Health and Safety Code regulates to a point, but it doesn't. It generally requires. Sorry, I went too fast. Generally requires there to be a perpetual care, but it doesn't require it if it's under 10 acres or if it's owned by a religious society. They're talking with the Texas Cemetery and Crematory Association. We've gone over this, the type of burials, the density. The issues are the high upfront costs, the ongoing maintenance, and the need to make sure that there's continual funding source for cemeteries. So if it's less than 10 acres, it may only last for one generation. And there are other issues as well for perpetual care and for cemeteries that are owned by a church or religious society. So with all that information, we have the proposed standards. The state law says that we have to have a process, and we do have a process. It's the SP2 process. These would be standards that would go along with that process. So must be platted on a public street, at least 80 feet wide, and it must be at least 25 acres in size. Setbacks would be 50 feet from a public right-of-way, 20 feet from any other property line, not located in a easement. If it's basically the height limit is 35 feet. If it's adjacent to residential, it's 25 feet, but it can increase up to 35 feet based on the setback. Again, the minimum lot size would be 25 acres for a new cemetery. No fencing or screening between private utility or public or private utility easement and the right-of-way. You would be able to have a variety of accessory buildings and accessory uses on the site there, typically with a cemetery. Be some lighting regulations, generally not an issue with cemeteries, but you never know. Funeral homes would be, we already have that parking requirement in the ordinance. The parking for the rest of it, we would require, since you typically don't have parking lots for a cemetery, we would require the internal driveways be designed in such a way that they're wide enough for people to go through, but also pull off to the side and park off to the side if they're visiting the cemetery. Application procedures, again, those would be the SP2 procedure. Additionally, besides that, they would have to also include a concept plan or a site plan that shows the proposed locations of the internal driveways. That just shows from a traffic layout and from a practical standpoint, or where the driveway is going to be. And then we have some definitions: cemetery, columbarium, and mausoleum. These more or less mirror the Texas Health and Safety Code, and so your request here today is for a recommendation, and if we get one today, we will take it to council on January 14th. Be happy to answer any questions.
I have one question.
Okay.
You got the minimum lot width at 80 feet.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have no room for,
Yeah.
I mean, by the time you put in a ingress and egress and all that, there's not I don't understand the 80-foot width.
Remember, lot width is measured up to the point of the front setback line, and then it can be wider.
Okay.
So basically it's saying at the street, you have to have at least 80 feet, so you have room for all of that stuff. And then, back in the back areas you get into the site, it can get wider.
So we're not going to get no applicants within 100-foot wide lot that try to come in and put a cemetery in?
Well, it also has to be a minimum 25 acres, so.
Okay.
And again, these aren't, even if they did that, it's still an SP process. So still have the ability to say no. These are still, these are kind of like the hotel standards. They're there. You have the right to still refuse to deny a hotel being built if it doesn't meet those standards, or for any other reason that you see fit for the public health, safety, and welfare.
I have two questions. On the lighting, can we require dark sky lighting for something of this sort?
We do require it to be directed into the property and downward. It's same language we use in the overlays, basically angled down, shielded so it doesn't go off the property.
Okay, and then I've seen columbariums that are actually associated with churches.
Mm-hmm.
They're not 25-acre plots of land. So can you have a columbarium that's not this large size like this?
They're different. There's some different situations where it's like where it's a church, and it's a whole other section of state law. We're not talking about that. The section of state law that covers burials with a church or mosque or something like that. That's actually a different section, and would be covered by that. So this is not that such a situation.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thanks, Ken.
Okay.
We'll be looking for a motion to move this to City Council in our public hearing. Moving on to item number 5, tobacco-related retail businesses, some other amendments for the UDC.
Yes. So these were requested by the city council for us to research and propose and bring forward. So they asked us to look at regulations for tobacco-related retail businesses and separation distances from protected uses, and then we're also proposing some operational standards. So in doing some research after council asked us to look into it, found the concerns that most of the tobacco use in vaping is established during adolescence or youth. As we know, e-cigarettes are marketed to the youth, especially the middle and high schoolers, with the flavored e-cigarettes and the use of disposables, which makes it easy. A lot of the concern is based on not the widespread use, but the ones who do use. They have an increase in intensity of daily use, and which encourages the risk of addiction. There was a state law that was proposed at this last session that didn't make it through, that addressed some of the concerns about the marketing strategies and the proximity to religious institutions, schools and parks, that also address the concerns of student health, addiction, and the negative impacts on the environments where the youth exist. The State law currently does not allow cities to ban the sales or change the age limits, but cities can impose operational factors such as location, density, and signage. So that's what we are proposing today. So the existing state regulations for e-cigarettes, tobacco products are through Chapter 161 of the Texas Health and Safety Code. Again, it allows cities to adopt regulations that are more compatible or more stringent to the existing statutes, or addresses an issue that's not addressed in the statutes. Section 161.122 prohibits the placement of signs within 1,000 feet, advertising signs within 1,000 feet of a church or school, and has some specifics for how they're measured and various exceptions. So these are things that our police department and our code department continually look into. So our proposal, you'll see next month, this is just your work session, is to create a new section for performance standards for tobacco-related retail businesses. That's the term that we are using. Code, actually in the smoking ordinance, we have tobacco-related businesses. That is a specific defined term in the smoking ordinance. We added retail in there to be specific. It's kind of like alcohol, where you have some on-premise consumption, some off-premise consumption. And so the retail in terms of tobacco is that off-premise consumption, where you buy it and you use it somewhere else. We create purpose and intent and applicability sections. Discuss illumination, which essentially requires that any of the advertisements, anything they have in their windows, be turned off during the non-operational hours. The core of these performance standards are to prohibit retail sales within 1,000 feet of a protected use defined as a school and a public park. The measurement would be property line to property line when they're on separate properties, or door to door if they're in separate tenant spaces within the same property. We're also adding a section about existing businesses and the non-conforming. So any business that was established or maybe in place today as a retail use, because it's not anything other than retail until this ordinance is adopted, those can remain in place indefinitely. They can be sold as long as they're not expanded, as long as they don't change what they sell. So they can exist as any other non-conforming use. But if they cease to exist, or if they change to a legal use and then want to change back to a tobacco-related retail business, they would not be able to do that. So they can exist as long as they choose to be continuous use. As soon as that continuous use stops, as all other non-conforming uses, then they would have to cease the operations. We are proposing to amend the non-residential land use chart and the CC commercial districts to provide that the sales would only be allowed in the CC community commercial district, and they would be prohibited, again, within 1,000 feet of a school or a public park. The chart would also provide a reference to the new section 3.23. So this is a map that staff did. We did a lot of different maps when we were working through this. The dark blue are the schools, and the light blue are the 1,000 feet from a school. Dark green are the parks, 1,000 feet. The light green is 1,000 feet from the park. So the red are the areas that are zoned CC that are outside of the 1,000-foot buffer. So therefore, that means those are areas where the retail sales of tobacco products would continue to be allowed by right. They could come get a CO just like they do today. Any property zoned CC inside any of these buffers would not be able to get a CO, would be prohibited. There would not be a variance process, a zoning process. When you use the word prohibited in a zoning code, there's no options. That means it cannot happen. So they can't come to our desk and ask for a rezoning to be able to do it here once we say it's prohibited. A couple of existing definitions we found, because we wanted to look at, do we need to be a little more specific? We only define a private school having one or more grades, kindergarten through 12, and more than 100 students. We define religious institution, we define church. We thought we needed to tighten that up a little bit, so we are defining a school, not just a private school, but any school. This is a public school, a charter school, or a private school. that, again, has students in one or more grades, kindergarten through 12, and more than 100 students enrolled and attending at a single location. We also brought over the definition of tobacco products from the smoking ordinance, and then we brought over the definition of tobacco-related business, but scrubbed it to be a retail store only. In order to be a tobacco-related retail business, it has to be a business that primarily sells at least 51% of the total revenues as being tobacco products, which includes the vaping products. A couple years ago, in 2023, we had a new state statute that requires the city send notifications to people who might be made non-conforming. So we're preparing about 2,600 notices. There'll be postcards that will go out to people who have retail as an allowed zoning today. That is within 1,000 feet of those areas. So we're not noticing everybody who was read on that map, but if they're within 1,000 feet and they're zoned the CN, CC, in these different overlays, basically where they would be allowed to do retail today and after the ordinance is adopted would not be allowed to do the retail tobacco products, they are getting a notification from us. We'll be sending those out probably next week. And so on the postcard we have a QR code that sends them to a web page that's got a lot more information. So we are presenting this to you today just for your information. In the next couple weeks, we'll be doing our publications in the newspaper, mailing our postcards. We'll be bringing it back to you early February for your recommendation to City Council. And if everything stays on schedule, bring it to City Council on February 12th for their vote. Be happy to answer your questions.
Does this include hookah lounges?
It does not, because hookah lounges have their own definition and their own set of rules. And hookah lounges, we talked about the on-site versus off-site. Hookah lounges are that on-site smoking, so they would fall under the smoking ordinance. This is just the retail tobacco where you take it and you use it somewhere else.
There are vending machines now for vape products that are being installed in bars, restaurants. Do you consider that?
So that's where that 51% rule would kick in.
Okay.
So it has to be 51% of their total revenues being sales of these products in order to be considered one of these businesses. So this would not apply to convenience stores, the Quick Trips or whatever. This would just be for those stores that this is their primary business.
A lot of ATMs, Bitcoin ATMs, BTMs, whatever you want to call them, have digital advertising at the top. Those are going to be 24 hours a day. Depending upon where that machine is located in the store, you could see that from a window. They're not going to be turned off. So just FYI.
Well, this won't address the Bitcoin, but if we have, sometimes you'll see some that have neon signs or, again, the whole thing is to attract and make it neat for the younger kids to want to go in and see what is so exciting inside. And so at least when they're not open, we don't want to be driving by and seeing those. There's no need for those.
Yeah, I mean, they're small screens. It's not like a big sign in the window, neon sign in the window. But it is, something to be aware of, that those do have digital advertising on them. I did have a question on the schools. I understand there's homeschooling. Families will get together and will rent a room in a church. So your definition covers that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions, folks?
Okay.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Did you want to cover the survey results? And I wanted to thank everybody for participating in that, and I was pleased to see that there was some interest in some educational work sessions throughout this year.
Yeah, so I'll just run through these. It's always kind of interesting whenever you fill out a survey to see what the results are, so I wanted to make sure y'all saw that. So we have 9 members, 8 people responded. I guess, yeah, 7 of you voted to have the educational sessions. And your frequency, the majority, 6 of you said to do them quarterly on a 3rd Monday. So whenever we did y'all's orientations, we talked about the first Monday was always the set meeting. The third Monday was always optional, would be called. So that was, in our eyes, kind of always that penciled-in meeting. And so I believe I already sent an email to everybody asking y'all to please put that on your calendars to make sure that you didn't double book yourself whenever we have one of these. So I've got another chart, I think I provided to y'all as well, just to see what the results were of what your interests are. So the top were the economic development presenters from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, as well as the Chamber of Commerce. So we've already reached out to Maura Gast, who's the executive director of the Convention Visitors Bureau. I'm talking too fast. And Beth Bowman, who's the president of the Chamber of Commerce. And so we already have them lined up for our first discussion, I believe it was in February. We also have the pink line here is the fiscal analysis. That is something that we've already put out a request for proposal, and we got 6 responses back, so we're going through those now. So hopefully by the time I'm sure we will, by the time we get this to y'all, we'll have a contractor. And it's really, I think fiscal analysis is really cool. It's good information to have. It's kind of a different perspective as you make your decisions. And so hopefully we'll have the contractor. If not, you'll get one of us. But be able to explain just the details and nitty-gritty of the fiscal analysis and what they're working on in order to provide us through our study that we're going to be doing. I'm going to go to a different list instead of going through those individually. So we asked this just because a lot of us, like Debbie and I, are always transferring articles that we find nerdy. And if there's anything that we thought y'all might find interesting, I wanted just to see if you'd be open and wanted me to send those to you, because I'm always forwarding stuff, and internally we're always forward stuff to each other. So I'm glad to see that most of y'all were interested in those. And also, you have links to the council work sessions. I mean, all you have to do is just go to the city's website. All the work sessions, our work session here today is now being televised and also recorded. And so whether you can see them live or whether you want to go back and see any of the council meetings, often there's some really interesting topics that we might not get to because they're not urgent for y'all to know about your land use decisions, but they affect just kind of the general environment of what we work within. So anyway, I highly recommend that y'all just kind of keep your pulse on what's on the council agenda, what they'll be talking about. If you're at work, just put it on the side when you just listen to it while you're doing something else. I think it's good to kind of keep in the loop. You can also sign up for it's a listserv, so where you get emails, and it depends on different topics. You can do parks, economic development, housing, and when they send things out, you can get that information. So there's different ways to keep in touch with what's going on at the city that can be sent directly to you. All you have to do is just make a little effort to go find those. So I'm going to bring up the list of topics just so y'all can see how they fell out. So we talked about the fiscal analysis and the economic development in the chamber. 5 of you wanted some information about the housing benefits and incentive programs, also form-based code. That's something that council's also asked for as well. We think that would be a good way to give you some perspective. It's not just what's happening in Heritage, but hopefully over the next year we'll be bringing forward some low-density or low-intensity mixed-use zoning districts. We have the high-intensity mixed-use zoning district in the PUD 6 area, and all of those are all about mixed use and walkability, and it's kind of a 180 of the suburban form that we're used to. So we'd like to get that on your radar, at least kind of understanding the what and the why and the how and the where. There's a place for it and there's places not for it, and we think it's important to be able to think those through. Data centers and EV charging, that's been a more frequent topic, and I'll probably task Ken with some of this because he's been kind of our electric guy. But just to maybe, especially for those of you who are new, to go through some of the presentations that we went through last year about the data center standards and the thought process we went through with those. The Board of Adjustment intent and function. So if the carports start to go to the Board of Adjustment are kind of a third significant board in the cities to hear variances and special exceptions, and they have a place, as everybody does. And it's just good information. You don't have any jurisdiction over the Board of Adjustment. You don't even talk to them. You may know who they are, but that's separate from your position as a commissioner. But it's just good to know kind of a little bit of what everybody else does and what you should be doing, what they should be doing, and why does the state set it up that way. Another topic was the infrastructure basics. You see site plans all the time. We talk about driveways, we talk about water lines, we talk about all that. We haven't started to think through what that presentation would look like, but just to get a little bit of context as to, like we have a pre-development conference that we do every Thursday for different proposals, different development proposals. And so all the staff comes together and says, this works, this doesn't, but it's kind of put y'all at that table somehow so you can understand what the discussions are, why things might work, why they might not work. We'll think through how that structure is going to be, but it is good to understand when you see something, how these comments, what's the context of those comments, why are they important, fire, again, water, capacity, that type of thing. Accessory dwelling units, this is actually, council has asked us to bring the discussion back to the March Planning and Development Committee meeting, so this might come sooner than you think. But again, this is a topic that 4 of y'all asked to see. A few of the other topics are just about the downtown redevelopment and heritage district, autonomous vehicles, management of private rentals such as short-term rentals, and parking standards, and then there are a few kind of stragglers that y'all weren't concerned about, which is fine. The other topics, someone mentioned ethics. It wouldn't hurt for us to probably run that through every year or so. Carolyn does that, and just make sure you have ethics, just to put it on one of your work sessions and give you a refresher on that. If there are any other topics, just as we go through the year or even after this year, this is something that we should still continue doing. I think quarterly is doable for all of us. Please feel free to shoot me an email. Just kind of say, hey, this would be neat. These are just some topics that several of us talked about that would be interesting, things that we as staff had been working on already. But we're here for y'all. We're here to try to help build y'all up and support you in your decisions and make the best decisions you can. And whatever it takes is what we're going to do our best. So, Debbie, I'll turn it over to you if you had any more comments or thoughts.
I don't. I just really appreciate the interest and the commitment that you have to educating us and supporting us so we can make solid decisions.
So our first meeting is February 16th, which again is the third Monday in February. I've sent all these to y'all by email, but just as a reminder. So that's where we have the ICVB and the Chamber of Commerce queued up to come and talk to you about what they do, why they do it. May 18th is the second quarter meeting. Debbie, I don't know if you wanted to propose bumping that up to April?
Well, the idea was maybe before the election, and if there were any issues that were important to us during the election or that come up from different candidates, that we might have that second session before the election if there's a topic that we feel would be helpful. So it's up to everybody else.
Okay. We can just keep batting that around. We got plenty of time.
Yeah.
It's just all a matter of everybody's availability and their scheduling. August 17th is our third quarter meeting, and then November 16th is our fourth quarter meeting. So just, again, y'all have those. And we plan to, I have these color-coded because we plan to, as much as we can, kind of go down this list. And, if there's something you want to hear before we get to something else, just please reach out to me and let me know what your thoughts are.
And note that these sessions start at 6 PM
Yes.
in deference to those of us who have jobs elsewhere that need that little extra 30 minutes to leave their office and get here. We don't have the same requirements to start a public hearing at 7 PM, so we thought those work sessions could start more conveniently at 6 PM.
And then we didn't want to start too late because we don't want to kill your whole evening.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Time-wise, we thought no more than an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah, well, probably no more than 2. I mean,
Ah.
it depends on what, I'm thinking hour and a half to 2.
I like efficiency.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah,
your prerogative.
that's the whole
It
point.
depends on what it is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great, thanks. Future agenda items, we think we've kind of covered that with this. Payroll. Mileage. Thank you, then we will adjourn at 6:55, and we will reconvene close to 7 PM in the public hearing room.